driven by the kind of sound, the kind of sound spectrum that we want to get at the end of the day. So whether it be by geometrical and mechanical means, by designing new bells, new bell shapes, for instance, or by algorithmic and digital ways, by designing spaces and multi-dimensional spaces and particular geometries like torus, spheres, etc., and see what kind of sound it generates. But still, in Jean-Pierre's example, the music was the classical music. So this parameter was neutral, and it was the parameter of sound that was acted upon. And in Margaret's talk, Margaret was at a much higher level. I would say at the level of cultures and aesthetics, trying to track how creativity is at work and innovation is at work in the musical ideas, the musical forms, and how new musical forms may emerge. And she presented 3 ways of doing that. But my concern was how do the things connect? How, for instance, how do the different levels evoked by Margaret connect one with the other? For instance, we know since Rameau, in the Occidental history of music theory, that the music systems, which are formal, discrete, combinatorial, are nonetheless derived from some sound reality, from the resonance and the harmonic resonance of resonating bodies. So in Rameau, for instance, one can see that resonating bodies have harmonics, and that from these harmonic structures, then the whole system is derived. Then this vertical system is kind of horizontalized in order to generate some sequential logic with notes and combinatorics on notes. This was long ago, but more recently, at the end of the 20th century, there was in contemporary music a movement called spectral or spectralist music. I don't know if you heard about that. It was quite powerful in Europe, but there was a few American composers and a few Asian composers. For instance, Shu Yi was a Chinese composer that came to France and was associated to this movement. They did the same as Jean-Philippe Rameau, right? Trying to build up some new system of writing music, and to start from the physical reality and the way physical body resonates, except that they took different materials. A little bit in the same thing that you showed. So instead of starting from harmonic sound, they started from inharmonic sound, and they built up very different system. So I would be curious, and maybe this question is addressed to both of you, how this kind of phenomenon that you can see in music history would fit into your system. So, for instance, how going from innovation and creativity at the level of sound structures induces at another level, and maybe at another time in history or the system, will induce innovation and creativity at other levels. How would this fit with your three-pole structure?
Well, I can only go on what you just said about it, because otherwise I don't know. I don't know about spectral music, so I can only go on what you said. But it seems to me it fits very well, because people were already well aware that harmonics had to do with the resonating of physical media, and they already knew that different physical media, resonate in different ways and have different sounds, etc., etc., etc. And so, if they were trying to be original, if they were trying to break away in a very fundamental way from what had gone before, then I think it's entirely possible that they would have thought, well, let's take that fact about music, let's hold on to that, right? So that, we're not going to something completely new. That never happens. You don't get novelty out of nothing, right? But keep that, but consider other sorts of instrument, like you were talking about, Jean-Pierre, and see what we can get out of that, and then and explore that and see whether it is interesting or not, whether it is complex, whether it's more like chess or noughts and crosses. If it turns out to be like noughts and crosses, drop it, it's not interesting. Turns out to have the sort of complexity of chess or even drafts, that's another matter, then we'll stick with it. Now, I don't know whether they did stick with it, I don't know, because you've spoken of past tense, I don't know whether these people are no longer doing that, whether it turned out not to be sufficiently interesting, musically speaking, for it to have lasted even this long.
No, actually, I think it was very considered and an interesting music movement. And what I see in young composers arriving now in places like Ircam, where I work, and where we have a lot of musicians and composers coming along, is that now they have integrated this aesthetical, I wouldn't say revolution, this aesthetical change, and they have integrated it quite naturally into their language. So I would say it was quite successful in a way.
Yeah.
And another detail is that, at the beginning it is exploratory in the domain of sound and also in the domain of musical aesthetics, but at some point, I guess, in that case, it became transformational. Yeah, and you would agree with this kind of, Jean-Pierre, any thoughts about?
Well, for me, it's a bit difficult to generalize too much. I think what I've been showing was something very specific, very directly connected to geometry. But still, I mean, music is minimal aspects. Some of them, of course, are very much related to rhythm and to also pieces which are composed as really with a beginning, structure, and end, and internal structure, which is also very interesting and also is worthy of analysis. So I've not touched this at all. So you would imagine that maybe if you really approach some completely different kinds of instruments, actually they will also offer some other possibilities of internal structure which would be interesting and which also be connected to the internal resonances of these instruments. I've not given any thought to that. Actually, one thing I had was to discuss with Dennis de Turk, who is the one who designed, the pieces, short pieces I showed, why he picked this one. I mean, you should know that Dennis was a very, excellent pianist, and his wife was a very good flutist, professional flutist. And so his knowledge of music was very big. So he just, the ones I showed, he chose them. It was not a random thing. So I'm sure he has made many different attempts, and he just picked the ones he found that were the more striking. So I think this combination of having new material and new, even the new vision of what a piece could be, would require some completely new ideas, and I'm at this moment completely unable to touch upon, but I certainly can understand that there could be some kind of new combination of these two things.
Thank you. So now it's time to open the question to the general audience, keeping in mind that we're a little bit late, so we'll try not to take maybe not too many of them.
Thank you, professors, for your talk. I have just one question directed to Professor Bourguignon.
Could you speak more loudly? Because here we have difficulty hearing.
It's
usual on the scene that one can hear.
Sure. My question concerns the improvisation algorithm. I know very little about them, but I still have one question on my mind. Recall the scene when the musician interact with the two clones, and I vividly recall that improvisation, though it is called, but it seems to me that the clone for the saxophone is it, or what's the instrument? It kind of struck me as being sustained at a very highly expressive level, like the activation. So I was wondering whether this particularity is because of the algorithm, or is it intended to be? As in case I'm not clear enough, for the algorithm that you use to simulate or improvise, is there any particular threshold that, because it is based on textual continuity, that the algorithm will pick up the high points, then they will continue, right? So does that pose a problem if the simulation or the signal they pick up is below that threshold, does it mean that the algorithm will not respond so well?
I think this question was directed to the first talk. Okay. I think there was yes, this question is in connection with my talk, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so well, if you allow, I will answer. Thank you. All right, so I think I understand the question. So maybe I wasn't clear enough about this. In this algorithm, the interesting thing is that the digital agent has a certain structure of memory. And in this structure of memory, there are plenty of channels of different musical information from harmony to rhythm, etc. And you have this kind of, well, cognitively inspired, and it's not real neuroscience. Actually, you're right, this was fake neuroscience. So maybe real neuroscience is not effective in helping us in creativity, but fake neuroscience is very good. I will explain this later. So you have this profiles of activation that change all the time in the memory, depending on what's happening in the environment, right? But you have also what I call self-listening. Self-listening is the internal logics of the agents with regard to what it learned, the structure of its memory, and its own model of intentionality, of intent. I didn't talk a lot about this, but of course you have to have a model of intentionality. So this is the internal logic. This internal logic generates its own profiles inside the memory, which are disconnected from what happened in the environment, which are just linked to the internal sequential logics which has been learned or which pertains to certain rules that are defined by the composer, for instance. And now, this is in competition with the other profile. This is why I said that the system is collaborative and competitive between different processes. So at a certain time, the agent has a combination of all these profiles coming from analysis of what's happening in the environment, and profile coming from self-listening and self-internal logic. And all this is combined. So you will have plenty of peaks in the memory, and some peaks might be explained by the understanding of what's happening in the environment. Some peaks might be explained by the understanding of the internal logic and self-listening, and some peaks might be the combination of both. When you have the combination of both, boom, you have a very high peak, and then the system will tend to get there. And this is very good, because if the system gets there, it will find solution where it complies to its own internal logic, and it complies to what's happening in the environment, which is what a very good human improviser would do in such a case. So the system is never silent. It always has something to do, but there will be evolving balance between internal self-listening and internal logic, and complying to the constraints coming from the environment. But you will always have solutions, right?
Okay. It just struck me as a bit peculiar that it seems that when the musician and the machine interact the most, the machine seems to be a bit repetitive.
So
that's my impression.
Excuse me, can you say it again?
I feel that the part when the musician and the machine, the clone, interact the most intensively, the machine seems to be a bit repetitive in what it comes out.
Yes, maybe in this film, maybe in this movie, because it was the purpose of this experiment. But in other cases, that I could show you, it would be quite the opposite. I'm being told that we have to stop because we have to chain with the concert. So I'm sorry about this very short question session, and I thank you all for attending the session, and I thank the speakers.